Okay, here we are. Today is day 13 on the Advent of Cyber Challenge. Today's challenge is YARA Rules, YARA mean 1. I'm going to go ahead and give my quick disclaimer, but I also have a hot take on this one, so I apologize if it's a cynical hot take, if you will. But nonetheless, I'm not a cybersecurity professional. I have no experience in or with cybersecurity, so I'll be taking on these challenges like a beginner, like other beginners would. So of course, sometimes I stop and research things, but I'm just going to be forthright. I had to actually watch a video before actually performing this challenge because yet again, we do a pretty poor job at explaining how to work through this one. Of course, we have video 1 and video 2. I did watch through this one here, which is Ginger Hacker, and thankfully he at least made a lot more sense of what was going on than they do in the actual room here. But we have 2 tasks today. Task 1, introduction. Task 2, YARA rules. And before we begin, I will just state again 2 things right up front. They do not explain how you create YARA rules, and they do not explain how you execute YARA rules. And of course, as a beginner, I've never even worked with YARA or creating YARA rules. So the room is kind of created as if you have a background and or understanding in how to do that. And if you do not, you will most certainly need someone better than myself to explain how to do that and why those things are created the way they are. They give a lot of explanation on the basics, if you will, but they don't add enough depth on how to actually go about the challenge. So of course, here we go. Task 1. So introduction, when McSkitty went missing, there was chaos and uncertainty at the TBFC, Best Festival Company. However, even in her disappearance, McSkitty was trying to help the TBFC Blue Team. Taking a page out of the crisis communication process, McSkitty sent what looks like a bunch of images to the Blue Team from an anonymous location. These images looked like they were related to Easter preparations, but they contained a message sent by McSkitty. The crisis communication process outlines that a message might be sent through a folder of images containing hidden messages that can be decoded if you know the keyword. And boy, do they mean that. The Blue Team has to create a YARA rule that runs on the directory containing the images. The YARA rule must trigger on a keyword followed by a code word. After extracting all the code words in ascending order, the Blue Team will be able to decode the message. Learning objectives, understand the basic concept of YARA, and that's literally pretty much all you're going to learn, or at least that's all I learned. Learn when and why we need to use YARA rules, that's debatable. Explore different types of YARA rules, that's also debatable. And learn how to write YARA rules, that's also debatable. Practically detect malicious indicators using YARA. Yes, if you watch maybe someone else's video or you have a background knowing how to do this. So before moving forward, we need to review the questions in the connection card below. Do we have an attack box? No. VM? Yes. Split screen available? Yes. Direct link? No. And credentials to log into the VM via RDP, VNC, or SSH? Also no. Right here, it's just letting us know that we do need to start our target machine. I will also state that I am a premium user, and as a premium user, I did that so that way I didn't have a bunch of issues with the target machines and VM attack box. But of course, doing the challenge during the previous endeavor, if you will, my target machine failed on me like 2 or 3 times. Neither here nor there. Either way, in the attached VM, the folder sent by McSkitty has been downloaded to Home Ubuntu Downloads Easter. So this is the file path here, and we'll be using that folder to run our YARA rules against. So right here, I think it should ask, hey, have you started your attack box or your target machine? And we would check yes, but of course it just says, let's go. I think that should have been my strong indicator right there. All right, so of course, as we see here, task 2, YARA rules, we have a bunch of text over explaining the basic concepts, if you will, but really nothing in regards to creating and how to execute your own YARA rule. It just kind of says at the bottom here, it's time to complete the practical task and to search for the keyword TBFC followed by the ASCII alphanumeric keyword across the folder here, directory to extract messages sent by McSkitty, and you can help decode the messages. My favorite part here is it just states good luck. How many images contain the string TBFC? What regex would use to match? What regex would you use to match a string that begins with TBFC followed by one or more alphanumeric ASCII characters? And what is the message sent by McSkitty? So first and foremost, we have our target machine open. Here is the folder into the downloads and into Easter, and we see all the images shown here. So that's where those messages are hidden. Let's close this out. And let's begin task 2. And I do apologize if I have to actually open up the video again to get a little bit of a reminder here on how we do this. Okay, so YARA overview. At this stage, McSkitty, the lead defender, has entrusted you with a mission involving the use of YARA rules. Before jumping into action, let's take a closer look at what YARA is, how it works, and why it's such a valuable tool in TBFC's fight to protect SOCMIS. YARA is a tool built to identify and classify malware by searching for unique patterns, the digital fingerprints left behind by attackers, and imagine it as detective's notebook for cyber defenders. Instead of dusting for prints, YARA scans code, files, and memory for subtle traces that reveal a threat's identity. Within TBFC, YARA serves as a silent guardian, silent guardian, scanning through systems and uncovering the faintest traces of malicious activity that others might overlook. Now, as snow drifts over Wareville and the SOCMIS network trembles under threat, it's your turn to wield this tool and restore the balance. Now, why YARA matters and when to use it. You might wonder why McSkitty chose this tool for the mission. In the world of cyber attacks, defenders face an endless stream of alerts, suspicious files, and anomalous network fragments. Not every threat stands out. Some hide in plain sight, disguised as harmless documents or scripts. That's where YARA shines. YARA gives defenders the power to detect malware by its behavior and patterns, not just by name. YARA allows you to define your own rules, providing your own view of what constitutes malicious behavior, and you're not alone. Many YARA rules have already been written by defenders from other kingdoms that once faced similar threats. You can use, adapt, and improve these shared rules to strengthen TBFC's defenses and protect SOCMIS altogether. For the defenders of the SOCMIS, this means faster detection, smarter hunts, and fewer threats slipping by unseen. And of course, another thing I'd just like to make a mention of is, once again, it does completely state that McSkitty is still disappeared. But of course, in the day 10 and day 11, it makes reference as if she's right there in the SOC room working alongside her pals, if you will. Okay, so in what situation might defenders rely on this tool? Post-incident analysis, threat hunting, intelligence-based scans, and memory analysis. When the security team needs to verify whether traces of malware found on one compromised host still exist elsewhere in the environment, that would be post-incident analysis. Searching through systems and endpoints for signs of known or related malware families, that would be threat hunting. And intelligence-based scans, which would be applying shared YARA rules from other defenders or kingdoms to detect new indicators of compromise. Memory analysis would be examining active processes in a memory dump for malicious code fragments. So the examples above show common uses of YARA, but defenders often find even more creative ways to apply it during investigations and hunts. YARA values. In the constant battle to protect SOCMIS, time and precision matter most. That's where YARA shows its true value. It's given defenders clarity in chaos. With YARA, you're not waiting for an antivirus update or a third-party alert. You have the power to create your own rules, detect new variants, and act before the threat spreads. For TBFC defenders, YARA brings several key advantages: speed, flexibility, control, shareability, and visibility. And of course, you can read through those if you wish. In short, YARA empowers defenders to move from passive monitoring to active hunting, turning intelligence into action before the attackers strike again. I'm going to pause there, take a sip of coffee. Okay. Now that you understand what YARA is, I suppose, and when to use it, I'm sorry, I know I'm super cynical. It feels like the challenges started off so beginner friendly for the first couple days. And then it's like, I feel like after like day 10, it just kind of started to really teeter off there towards the end. And it's almost like we really put a lot of effort into explaining and showing how in the first few days. And then it's like by day 10, we threw in the towel and was like, they'll figure it out. All right, so to uncover digital footprints of the evil king malware, let me reread that. Now that you understand what YARA is and when to use it, it's time to see how it actually works to uncover digital footprints of the evil king malware. A YARA rule is built by several key elements. Right here, it'd be great to tell you how. They do not. You can use Nano or any text editor, if you will, to actually create your rule. And of course, they don't tell you how to save that rule. You can just save it as a file. If you need to save it as a text file, a .yar file, nothing. So a YARA rule is built from several key elements: metadata, strings, and conditions. Metadata is the information about the rule itself, who created it, when, and for what purpose. Strings, the clues YARA searches for, would be text, byte sequences, or regular expressions. The mark that marks suspicious content. Conditions would be the logic that decides when the rule triggers, combining multiple strings or parameters into a single decision. So here's how it looks. This is just an example, of course. And we can see here the actual rule name, metadata. So we see the author, description, date. We see the strings that they've put in here. So these would be the variables, if you will, and the strings that follow there afterward. Of course, provide no explanation on this or this just yet, or even this part just yet. And then we have the condition. All right. So in this example, you can see that the meta section contains fields like author, description, and date. These fields are not required, but they are highly recommended. They help you and other defenders understand what the rule is about, who created it, and when it was written. When your collection of YARA rules grows, having clear metadata will save you time. Without it, finding or updating the right rule can quickly become a challenge. Next, we see the string section. This is where you would define the actual clues, text, byte sequences, or regular expressions that YARA should search for. Finally, the condition section tells YARA when to flag a match based on the logic you define, in our case, any of the strings. So together, these three parts form the foundation of every YARA rule, which the three sections they're discussing would be condition, strings, and meta. I think this should be important as well, but who am I? So strings, as mentioned earlier, strings are the clues that YARA searches for when scanning files, memory, and or other data sources. They represent the signatures of malicious activity and fragments of text, bytes, patterns that reveal the presence of King Malware's code. In YARA, there are three main types of strings, each with its own purpose. Let's talk about them and see how they can help defend the kingdom of TBFC. So we have text strings. Trying to see if it says anything else, but I guess not. Text strings are the simplest and most common type used in YARA rules. They represent words or short text fragments that might appear in a file, script, or memory. By default, YARA treats text strings as ASCII and case sensitive, but you can modify how they behave using special modifiers, small keywords added after the string definition. The example below shows a simple rule that searches for the word Christmas inside a file. So we can see here why they didn't put in meta is beyond me. They just said those were the three most important things, and then they didn't do it here. So we have the rule name, and then it shows the strings. This is the variable, and that would be the string that we're searching for. Now, sometimes attackers like King Malware try to hide their code by changing how text looks inside a file using encoding, case tricks, or even encryption. YARA helps defenders counter these obfuscation methods with a few powerful modifiers that extend the capabilities of text strings. So case insensitive strings would be no case. So right here. By default, YARA matches text exactly as written. Adding the no case modifier makes the match ignore letter casing. So Christmas, all caps, or lowercase will all trigger the same result. So we would write it as, here's the variable, here's the string, and no case. Wide character strings would be wide, ASCII. Many Windows executables use 2-byte Unicode characters. Adding wide tells YARA to also look for the format, while ASCII enforces a single byte search. You can use both together. So of course we can see here. So they put a comma up here, which makes no sense because in the rule we see no comma. So that would be a little bit misleading, at least for me, of course, as a beginner. And then we have XOR strings, XOR. So malware's agents often XOR encode text to hide it from scanners. Using the XOR modifier, YARA automatically checks all possible single byte XOR variations of a string, revealing what attackers tried to conceal. So we would just call it right here afterward. And XOR, let's see what that stands for, is a binary operation that is commonly used for encryption and decryption of data. XOR operates on binary data bits and is based on the principles of the Boolean algebra. The operation involves 2 bits. The result of the operation is 1 if the 2 bits are different and 0 if they are the same. Then we have base 64 strings, base 64, comma, base 64 wide. Some malware encodes payloads or commands in base 64. With these modifiers, YARA decodes the content and searches for the original pattern, even when it's hidden in encoded form. So you'd call it right here. Each of these modifiers makes your rule smarter and more resilient, ensuring that even when King Malware disguises his code, the defenders of TBFC can still uncover the truth. Hexadecimal strings. Sometimes King Malware's code doesn't leave readable words behind. Instead, it hides in raw bytes deep inside executables or memory. That's when hexadecimal strings come to the rescue. Hex strings, and this is what kills me. We're going to go super in depth on each of the foundational parts, if you will, but then we don't apply what we're discussing into our practical challenge for the day. I just, from a beginner's point of view, I don't understand that whatsoever. Again, neither here nor there. That's when hexadecimal strings come to the rescue. Hex strings allow YARA to search for specific byte patterns written in hexadecimal notation. This is useful when defenders need to detect malware fragments like file headers, shellcode, or binary signatures that can't be represented as plain text. Don't ask me what this means here. All I know is they're using hexadecimal here and hexadecimal here. Maybe they know those values, maybe they don't. I'm not entirely certain. And of course, it doesn't really explain that here as well. Regular expression strings. So not all traces of King Malware's malware follow a fixed pattern. Sometimes his code mutates. Small changes in file names, URLs, or commands make it harder to detect using plain text or hex strings. That's where regular expressions come in. Regex, which this would have been nice to know, that regular expressions means regex. So you could have put like a hyphen here for, the short name abbreviation, if you will. Regex allows defenders to write flexible search patterns that can match multiple variations of the same malicious string. It's especially useful for spotting URLs, encoded commands, or file names that share a structure but differ slightly each time. So again, we left out meta for whatever reason. They said those are the 3 most important, but they only provided the strings and the conditions of this rule. And we can see strings. Here is the variable. I assume this is the regular expression, and I assume this is another one here. Again, not entirely certain, and we don't really go to explain any of this further in detail down here. It just says regex strings are powerful but should be used carefully. They can match a wide range of data and may slow down scans if written too broadly. So again, I do apologize. I don't know what these necessarily break down to as, and they don't provide any context for that as well. The only thing I do know is we will need this little piece here, so we can hit copy and come down here. So here, let's keep our place. We're under the regular expression strings going into conditions. So what regex would you use to match a string that begins with TBFC? So we know the string would begin with /TBFC. We got our colon, and then we can paste this here. Of course, for whatever reason, it deleted So we didn't need the equal sign is what that was. So if we wanted to run against this string followed by one or more alphanumeric ASCII characters, we could copy A to Z, which is all caps, A to Z, which is lowercase, and even 0 through 9 numbers. So this would be our alphanumeric, and hit check. Perfect. Thankfully, again, I only know that due to the Ginger Hackers video that I had to watch. All right, so conditions. Now that the defenders of TBFC know how to describe what to look for using strings, it's time to learn when YARA should decide that a threat has been found. It's time to learn when YARA should decide that a threat has been found. That logic lives inside the condition section. The heart of every YARA rule, the condition tells YARA when the rule should trigger based on the results of the string checks. Think of this as the final decision point, the moment when the system confirms, yes, this looks like King Malhair's code. Let's look at the few basic examples defenders use in their daily missions. So again, we're going to cover the condition section, and we even covered the string section as well as the meta section. So where are we at here? Go back to conditions. Okay. Match the single string. So the simplest condition, the rule triggers if one specific string is found. For example, the variable Xmas right here. Match any string when multiple strings are defined. So if we have multiple strings in that list, the rule can be configured to trigger as soon as any of them are found. So we literally can place the condition as any of these strings located. And then this approach is useful for detecting early signs of compromise. Even a single matching clue can be enough to raise attention. Match all strings. To make the rule stricter, you can require that all defined strings appear together. So condition again would be all of them. This approach reduces false positives. YARA will only flag a file if every indicator matches. So we can do any of them to flag for any. And then if we want to match for all strings, we would have it flag and match for all strings. So we can also use combined logic using the and, or not. And defenders often need more control over how rules behave. Logical operators let you combine multiple checks into one condition, just like building a small defensive strategy. So we can see here the condition is calling upon variable 1 or variable 2 and not benign. I don't know what that necessarily means. Let's see here. This means the rule will trigger if either the variable S1 or variable S2 is found, but not benign. In other words, detect suspicious code, but ignore harmless system files. So I'm assuming that's what this means, but again, it doesn't really give enough detail on that. Use comparisons like file size, entry point, or hash. YARA can also check the file properties, not just the contents. For example, you can detect files that are unusually small or large. A common trick used by King Malhair to disguise his payloads, so we can run a condition for any of the strings, and we're going to check for the file size that's less than 700 kilobytes. And here the rule will trigger when any one of the strings matches and the file size is smaller than 700 kilobytes. We've now reviewed the main examples of conditions, and it's time to move on to the practical use cases where these rules come to life. Okay. So YARA study use cases. The evil kingdom of Malhair used a Trojan known as Iced ID to steal credentials from systems. McSkitty's analysts discovered that the malicious files spread across Wareville shared a common signature, the same MZ header found in the executable malware used by the Dark Kingdom. These samples were small, lightweight, and the loaders designed to infiltrate the systems and later summon more dangerous payloads. So we're going to write our own YARA rule. Now, I know that we can copy this here and kind of reframe it in our own way. And of course, this was what kills me. Now we're adding meta back into it for a practical use case, but when we're showing things up there, no meta. We're not going to need the hexadecimal stuff here. And we're not going to run for Malhair. And as well, we'll even have to change the condition. So we would need to reframe this add a new string, and update the condition. So our analyst saved this file to the named iced ID starter.yar and executed it on one of the hosts. As a result, we can see that one of the files was detected. So YARA-R, I'm assuming that's how we execute. Actually, I'm not even assuming. I know that's how we execute it, but of course it doesn't necessarily tell you like, hey, this is how you execute a YARA file. And as well, they don't necessarily explain that you have to save it as a .yar. You can just save it as a file name. And so right here, we see YARA-R. We see the iced ID starter.yar. And I'm assuming they ran it against the C drive. And then down here, iced starter C drive with this folder path. And you can use man-yara command to find out what the flags could be. And they don't explain what man-yara stands for. And they don't explain what the YARA-R stands for, if that means to execute, which I know this is how you execute a YARA rule. Now, again, thanks to the Ginger Hackers video, -R allows YARA to scan directories recursively and follow SIM links. The -S prints the strings found within the files that match the rule. So putting everything together, the YARA command recursively, of course they could have said that right here, scans the C drive using the icedid.yar rule and can optionally display the matching strings when using the -S, but they don't necessarily say what -S stands for. I think it stands for show. I could be wrong. Next up is an interesting task where you'll need to create your own YARA rule, and good luck. Okay. So it's time to complete the practical task. The blue team has to search the keyword TBFC followed by an ASCII alphanumeric keyword across the... So we do know we're going to have to set a rule at least for alphanumeric keyword. And we're going to run that across this folder path here or directory. That way we can help decode the message that was sent by McSkitty. Now I'm going to try and do this from memory here if I can. So I'm going to launch this and we can open up a text editor, even though it does not tell you that that's what you can do. And I'm just going to call this file tbfc string detect open. And we're going to call this tbfc string detect. And actually, you know what we could do? Let's grab, even though I don't want to grab all of that, let me see if there's a smaller one we can grab. Here, let's just grab this one. Paste. And of course they don't tell you, but you can use Control-Shift-V to paste that in there. I'm going to go up here and call this tbfc string detect. We'll update the meta from this to tbfc. Oh, let's try that again. tbfc blue team. And we're going to search and detect for string of tbfc in image files. Change our date to 12. We'll put it through the actual date of the thing, which is the 13th. We definitely don't need all of this here. And from here, I may have to pause and actually come back after reviewing the Ginger Hacker video. So I'm going to pause here real quick and then I'll come back. Okay, we're back, and now that I actually did a quick review, of course, we need to create our variable here. So tbfc message, we can run equals, and now we needed to run against the tbfc string. So similar to what we did here, we're going to do a / tbfc, put that there, A to Z, AZ09, close that with a bracket, add our plus sign, / and then we're checking for ASCII. And then we can just put our variable name here. So tbfc underscore message. And let me double check my notepad here. Yes. Okay, so we had to create our variable. This is the regular expression we're looking for. We're looking for ASCII characters, and the condition we're just going to call back to our variable here. And to get out of this, we're going to do Control O. We've already saved it to tbf string detect, and we can hit Enter, Control X to get out of there. And now we need to call upon that to look for, and so of course it doesn't state whether we need to do recursive or just show, but I'm just going to do rs and the location of our YARA rule, which is going to be in the home. Actually, let's do this. Let's do pwd, and we're in home Ubuntu. Let's take a look inside, and we can see our YARA rule here. So tbfc string detect. Oh, I wrote sting detect. You know what? Let's rename that. So Control O, and then R. Enter. Yes, we want to save it as that. Control X. There we go. Now we need to do YARA -rs /home /Ubuntu. And then I do believe tbfc underscore string detect. I might be wrong here. And then we need to call the location of what we're searching for. So home, Ubuntu, downloads, and Easter. And let's see if that works. Okay, so I definitely called that wrong. So let's do pwd ls. I'll remove the old one. tbfc underscore sting detect. Okay. YARA -rs. All right, give me just a moment here, because I may have to come back yet again. Okay, we're back, and after review, I think I know what my issue was. So what we're gonna do is do a ls, then we're gonna do nano tbfc string detect. I don't think I added the rule, so rule. Then meta strings, and let's try. Oh my god. It's like everything I can do wrong is what I'm doing. tbfc message. There we go. So actually add the rule and then the correct variable name. So we're going to do Control O, Enter, X. We're going to clear all this stuff out. Now we're going to call YARA -rs home Ubuntu and tbfc string detect, and then we're going to call that upon the home Ubuntu directory. Holy moly, finally. Okay, so we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 files. So 5 images. And then we see that these are not in chronological order. So we would see 10 would be first. And we can do find. 16 would be next. So this one here, me. And 25, which is here, in. 46, hopsec, and then the final one is island. So we'll do hopsec island. Oh my goodness. I don't really care what it's going to analyze. And go ahead and power this down, terminate that. And that is day 13. That's it.